Hi there, let's talk about the great new features and improvements in version 1.8 of Volumator. So first of all, Volumator now supports Unreal Editor version 5.8. So now Volumator can run in Unreal 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 and 5.8. Now the main new feature in this version is the ability to generate simple volumes based on the selected actors. So this can be really helpful for fast prototyping or generating volumes over the whole map really quickly by just selecting all and pressing one of these three buttons here. Now these simplified volumes don't have the regeneration features of the main Volumator modes, so they are really mainly good for fast prototyping or generating a giant volume over a map, but they can be really helpful in cases where you just kind of want to throw a volume around something. So the three buttons here will increase in simplification as we go further right here, but let me walk you through them. Let's do this test run on this little broken piece of geometry here. And if we click clone actor shape, it will generate a volume based on this actor, and it will gift wrap it so that it will fill in all the blanks in the middle. So as we can see here, it's nicely sort of mapped the shape and sort of threw a blanket over the whole thing while keeping it somewhat simple. It will do a little bit of simplification. You can specify the maximum number of triangles with the resolution control here. So unlike the normal build modes, increasing resolution will reduce complexity because it's in Unreal units. But for these three modes here, reducing this slider here will reduce the number of triangles, reducing the complexity. Now in this case here, it's made this shape out of 106 triangles. So if we lower this down to 50, it will set the maximum number of triangles to 50. We can now see that it's used exactly 50. And of course, that's kind of chopped the corner off a little bit. It's not quite as accurate, but it's more simple. You'll also notice that it does a little expanding as well. You can disable that if you want, but if you want to, say, make it simple but big, then we can clone the shape here and it will create our slightly bigger volume, which is pretty helpful. Now, if we compare that to the Boxify version, which is the next more simple version over, it will generate the same shape, but then tear it apart and reassemble it out of various boxes of different sizes and rotations. So you can see it's a more simple version. Even though I didn't reduce the max triangle count, it still only used 58 triangles, which is a nice simpler shape here. And then lastly, the bounding box mode will just slap a cuboid volume over the whole thing. Now the real magic of these new simple volumes is that you can select multiple actors and then generate a volume over the whole thing really easily, just like that. So that will allow you to, let's say, select all of these actors here and then clone the shape. Or let's try it again. I'm deselecting the floor, by the way, or boxifying it to make it more simple. Or maybe we just want to throw a bounding box over them. And of course, if we want, we can make that much larger by expanding. Actually, let's really crank this up. If you manually type in values, you can make the variable much higher. And so now we can see that our bounding box covers this space really well. So this is really helpful for slapping a big volume over everything by just selecting all and pressing bounding box, or more complicated ones if you want here too. Okay, let's look at it in action on this test map here. Let's say that I want to throw a volume over this connecting bridge here. What we can do is make a marquee selection with Control and Alt to select the actors making up the area that we want. And then we can just clone actor shape, and it will make a more complex kind of volume shape representing the actors. If that is too complicated here, let's try again. And this time we'll use Boxify, which will take slightly longer, not very long still, but it will be a more simplified version of that. So you can see it's represented the shape here, but using far less triangles. And if we want to go extreme and keep it mega simple, and we just want to throw a bounding box over it, this will take no time at all, and it will be incredibly simple. So it's a really good solution, just throw a volume quickly over something. And of course, if you need like pinpoint accuracy and lots of controls over how accurate it is versus the shape and all that kind of stuff, that's where you'd use the normal volume controls here in Volumator. But to just quickly throw a volume over something where it can be fairly coarse or quick, then these three buttons here are awesome for that. One of the key use cases for these buttons here is the ability to quickly throw a volume over the entire map. So let me show you how you do that in this case. I'm going to do a marquee selection again, that's Control and Alt. and select everything here. You can see in this case, it's actually put a yellow selection box around the whole screen, which likely means it's the skybox that's selected. So I'm just going to press the control key and click that, and then that will now go away. And then if we do a bounding box over actor, even though it was over 300 actors, it built it in under a second. So that's a really, really fast way to just quickly throw a volume over the entire map. If that's too crude, and of course you can see there that it made the volume a little bigger than we'd want, and that will be very dependent on the meshes within all of these actors that you're selecting. If you need it to be more snug to the actors, again, we can use the clone actor shape, and that will gift wrap just the actors themselves rather than bounding boxes. And you can see that took a little longer, it took 12 seconds, but now the volume neatly wraps all of the actors there. So if you need it to be a little bit tighter around your actors, then you can do that there. I wouldn't recommend the Boxify actor shape thing for the entire map. It takes a lot longer when you're dealing with hundreds of actors, so probably wouldn't recommend that unless you want to wait for like a minute. It's great for sort of smaller subsections of actors, like maybe 10 or 20 or 30, but when we're getting into the hundreds, it's going to have its work cut out for it, and you're going to be waiting for a little while. So I'd recommend the other two for that, depending on your level of complexity that you're looking for. So yeah, really helpful feature if you just want to quickly throw volumes over objects. Another handy feature that's been added is the ability to change the pivot location of volumes. So if you didn't know, when you select an actor here, the widget will appear in the pivot location. This is the same as if you do a get actor location in Blueprint or whatever else. And some people are using this location for tech reasons, for triggering various things or whatever. And so now you have the easy ability in Volumator to change that for your volumes that you've created. Let me first off quickly build a volume here. Let's show selected. Okay, so as you can see, by default, Volumator will throw the pivot location in the sort of center of mass of the volume. Sometimes that can actually be outside of the volume. If you have something like a U shape, it could be placed in the center of the U, which isn't technically inside the volume, right? So that things like that could be a problem. So now if you want to change this though, you can come over to the Edit tab, and with the volume selected, you press Change Pivot Location. Now what that's going to do is going to deselect the volume and create a pivot relocator actor with a little Volumator sprite on it. And then we simply move that. So this has been spawned in the location of the pivot for the volume that you had selected. We simply just move this to wherever you want, and then press Change Pivot Location again. Now this pivot relocator will know which volume it's come from. So when we press this, it will find the original volume and then moves the shape and then moves the actor location in sort of the inverse amount. Anyway, you don't need to worry about that. The point is, it'll do it. So when we press it again, you can see the pivot relocator actor has vanished, and now the original volume is now reselected with the pivot moved. So again, if we just click on it here, you can see this over here. And we can move it again if we wanted to, and press Change Pivot Location, and there we go. It doesn't affect anything else. You are free to regenerate things just as usual, and everything is wonderful. So it's just a handy feature for people that need that. Yeah, let me know if you have any feedback. And as always, the test maps have been updated with some new examples. There's a bunch of bug fixes and improvements throughout the tool, as always. So if you do have any further feedback or requests or whatever, please keep them coming. But thank you very much. Happy volume building.